Hello, my friends and extended family. Um, Today's video is going to be um, getting back into where I'm at because I can see that some of you are trying to figure me out and try to figure out where I've come from and etc. etc. And I have left you a chaotic, puzzly mess with missing pieces that's difficult to put together. So. Um, but hopefully it should make you feel better that I haven't quite pieced myself all together either. And although I like to think that I've got most of the pieces gathered up and together, um, there might be a few missing pieces still to go. But all that being said, when it comes to the adoption, when it comes to the relationships that maybe didn't turn out the way I'd hoped, um, maybe didn't turn out the way a lot of you hope that your reunions will turn out, and on top of everything else, in finding some disappointment in the home I was placed in, and having to overcome a little bit of Stockholm syndrome in that I still feel as the family that raised me is my family, and when that's the case, you have a certain amount of empathy for those people and protectiveness, and you don't want to be too critical or judgmental. But for my own self, anyways, it's been critical thinking and putting things in their proper place of right and wrong, um, for myself to really unwind this whole mess and to look at it objectively and to see what's going on. So all that being said is, well, I'm left as a 43-year-old man who has some serious problems, some neurotic tendencies, some developmental behavioral issues, um, a lifetime of medicating my anxieties and things like that, unaware, lacking a moral education. I'd like to say that I've gone ahead and given myself that to a certain degree. Um, so so all said and done, I didn't have a great reconnection with my birth family, and that's okay. I didn't have a great um, time at trying to bond with my adoptive family, and that's okay too. Uh, where I'm at today, from where I've started, now the videos themselves started a couple years ago, and the reason for them was because I was at my wit's end. I'd gone to uh, the MLA of my local district. I'd been to an ombudsman. I'd talked to the Justice Department, and this was to do with drinking and driving. Um, and on top of that, I was going through alcohol recovery at that point as well and stuff. So the drinking and driving, the alcoholism, all those sort of things were all byproducts of the adoption. Okay, they all stemmed out of that. And now I'm not saying if I had been raised with my birth family, I may have been an alcoholic or had other similar issues or all kinds of things. Those things aren't exclusive. So I mean, they can include the same sort of things. Like I've got an alcoholic adoptive father, and when I say alcoholic, I mean someone who drinks 3 to 5 times a week. Okay, is that fair enough? Like you come home, you have a 6 pack 3 or 4 times a week. Okay, well if you did that with crack cocaine, well you'd be a crackhead. You do it with alcohol, you're an alcoholic. All right, so let's just make things simple. Let's look at it from a puritanical sort of point of view that if you drink alcohol regularly, well, You're an alcoholic. Maybe you could quit. I certainly said I could quit smoking when I was a teenager. That wasn't true. So, anyways, I was hopeful that out there in the world was some sort of advocate that would come along and say, Todd, Brian, whoever the heck you are, this is simple. It's just you haven't seen the right person, or you haven't been to the right psychologist, or it's this, or you need to look at this. And ultimately at that point in the game, I was willing to look at all my flaws. I was willing to accept full responsibility. I will change, but stop this horrendous life and stop the brutal abuse throughout this life and the constant throwing up of hurdles to me finding my way to a better life that was promised to my birth mother. A better life was promised, and that was the reason for the giving up, supposedly. And that was not provided in any way, any statistical way, physical, mental, spiritual, in any way was that provided. Unless you want to count an extremely challenging life as a better life. And there's an argument to be made for that. But I think that would be false advertising in the sense that you're taking me from the family, saying that life will be too challenging and I should have an easier life as a non-illegitimate child or whatever. So, false advertising, breach of contract, whatever you want to call it. It was also pointed out that I used some harsh language describing some of these people. Well, try to understand that when I call, when I say, well, a young woman was got pregnant out of wedlock, and when I say, well, the sign of the times was she was a slut. That's not my take on it. That's your guys' take on it. Okay? In the 1970s, that was the take. Okay? It was your parents, the 70 or the baby boomer generation, too shameful and too weak to be able to handle in their family that sort of shame. So they had to make up a big elaborate lie, send off these daughters to have their children elsewhere, and fudge up a bunch of paperwork and legal documents to keep this horrible secret about horrible parenting by these people. Heathenistic, slutty daughters that, brought shame upon the family. And again, this is not me. This is why I was adopted, right? Because of those attitudes. And there was a bit of a discrepancy when I was having a conversation about that because I use the reality of the situation to try and paint the picture of how these things have come to be and the hypocrisies behind it and the lies and the deception, because at a certain point of adoption, someone must have clued into the fact that we're really creating a very complex and diabolical lie for the sake of these young ladies, when it seems perfectly plausible that perhaps the society itself could have adopted a new attitude towards the young ladies and towards maybe single motherhood and towards maybe young people getting together in younger scenarios instead of finishing their school, taking a trade, the family supporting the family. I mean, it just seems like very common sense to me to do that, because to hide your shame, they really went to the ends of the earth to do so. And if you're doing it for some sort of Christian or spiritual purpose, well, you really can't lie to the spirits. They don't really give a shit about your paperwork. They know what happened, and they know how you dealt with it. And how you dealt with a problem and shame was to lie. Okay? So all those people that were involved in that are liars. Us adoptees as innocent victims in this have been forced to lie and pretend that there's someone else so that you folks could all continue on with your lie. Right? Now, I'm speaking very generally, and I don't want people to take things personally, but I want you to admit your parts in things. Admit your truths, admit your parts. If you're an 80-year-old, 90-year-old person right now, and you sent your child off to have their baby out of shame, do your part. Apologize. Okay? Admit what you've done, repent, and try to make an amends. Right down the line, come find me, grandparents. I know they're all dead now, but whatever. I mean, go find those adopted children and make your amends. Because these people are carrying your sins on their back for the rest of their lives. You know? And to tell the truth means to admit that, hey, listen, adopted family, you're not really my family. You know? Science and biology say no. You've fostered, you've guardianed, but you are not a mother and father to these people. You can act the part, but the reality is you're not. So all I want at the end of the day is people to be honest. Because if they were honest, well, it seems like we'd have avoided all my problems. We would have avoided most of the problems that adoptees are talking about today. You know, I see a lot of adoptees still pushing for their paperwork, you know, and their original birth certificates, this and that other thing. Yeah, those should be handed over. Hand them over right now. They do not belong to a shoddy government that assisted in the lying and cover-up of some indiscretions by young women and men, right? I don't want to blame all women. I mean, men are involved too, but quite often the men weren't even asked. Didn't even know. It was a baby scoop. So again, the blame does not, in my mind, lie with the birth parents or with the adoptive parents. They're simply people who participated in the big deception, were sold a lie, and it just avalanched out of control. And here we are today, out of control. And the government sure doesn't want to give up, you know, millions of kids a year that they can place where they want, because it's like the great social engineer, John Watson, said, give me a baby and I'll give you any kind of man. And then we look at the statistics about where these children were placed, what the results were, etc. And when used, like, I mean, I know. But you don't. You folks maybe don't know. But the point being is, you got to look at the big picture. You have to look at the whole picture. You can't gloss it over. Oh, it couldn't have been that bad. Oh, it can, it was, it is. So just quit kidding around. Quit lying. Quit being deceptive. Just talk about it openly. And, I mean, that's where I want to be. I want to be open about it. I mean, I've put my life up for review, to dissect, to look at, for all of our sakes. That's why I'm here. Let's dissect it. Let's see what the results are, and when we do certain things to people, what results do we get here? And I mean, you know, a lot of people like to think, well, you know, you don't seem that bad, or blah, blah, blah. I've suffered a lot. And, you know, the thing about everything is now, and there is a resolution. There has been catharsis, I believe is the word. Like, there's been some resolution for me through this whole process. And what that is, for me, is the fact that I have been able to be truthful and honest on this website. I have 1 second. I'm just going to turn off my buzzer. Sorry about that. I've been able to be honest for once. I've been able to talk about the issues I've had to carry around and deal with. I've gone through some psychoanalysis here with you folks. I've explored my own psyche, my feelings, my understandings. I've explored some of yours. We've contributed together, put some things together to build on our understandings. And in this process, I have managed to meet some people that I feel more intimately connected with because of our mutual experiences than just about anyone in the world. And in that, I have found the starting of what I like to think of as my new family. And that's you. That's you people, the adoptees. Because what I've finally come to in just about all of this is that I believe anyone, if they were willing and were very open-minded, empathetic, could come to understand the real horror of adoption. And we as adoptees maybe don't help because we put on such brave faces and we carry such great burdens with grace for the most part for a lot of us, that it must be hard to imagine that we are suffering and that we have suffered so much pain. So all that being said is that, you know, if my adoptive family want to come more into my world, that's fine. If they want to try to understand, that's fine. You know, and I'm more than willing to have them. If they want to, you know, grow as people, make their amends to me, I welcome it, and I encourage their growth if that's what they want. But I certainly am not going to hold my breath. Same goes with my birth family. If they want to come around to the table and they want to grow as people and maybe look at their own parts, you know, I don't really hold much of my birth family to responsibility in my situation. I think my mother was duped by the system. I think she was stunted at about the age of 16, and due to circumstance, I don't think she ever grew past that. And you know, she now lives with a person that's 5 years younger than me, and I believe they play video games, and maybe she's like got a disability, early disability pension for mental illness. I think is probably about where she's at. And even when I asked about the mental illness in the family, which she takes affects her for clinical depression and stuff, wasn't even willing to give that up. So, I mean, to me, what is that? Well, it's just a vortex of drain of energy out of my life. And I think it's better to just dam it up and close it up and be done with it. And again, I don't have any ill will to those parties. Okay, it was hard enough for me to come to a place of acceptance in all this. I certainly don't expect it from them, and I don't look down on them. I simply give myself a pat on the back for being able to gain a place of spiritual maturity and be able to accept the hard truth, the ugly truth, and let go of the tempting lie. So again, I know there's a lot of people whose hearts go out to me when I'm describing my situations and may feel empathy and pain for me and want to help, and I appreciate that. And unless you're like a real bureaucratic guru and know the ins and outs of the paperwork involved in uh, screwing people over in Canada, you're probably not going to be able to help me a whole heck of a lot besides your moral support and things like that. I love to hear your stories. But again, the victim is still that inner child of mine who I'm now fostering in the things that I feel that I lacked growing up. So I'm fostering my spiritual growth, um, working on my emotional management, um, getting in touch with my emotions, um, allowing my intellect to fly and to explore psychology, mysticism, all sorts of things that were sort of poo-pooed on in my upbringing. So I'm a brand new person, and you folks, these videos have been so therapeutic um, that it it's been a massive change in my life, my attitude, and how I perceive the world, and how I perceive myself. And I guess the big difference has come in that I now feel a lot better about myself. My self-esteem is much improved. Um, I see my strengths, and I see that I'm a much more amazing person than I ever gave myself credit. And I'm trying to say that without seeming arrogant or narcissistic or whatever, but I I have been blessed with some intellect, and I have been blessed with some pretty tragic and traumatic events, which has really kind of broken my mold and broken that mundane sort of thinking that has allowed me to really see the world from different perspectives, reach into the spiritual and find my connection and connections, and yeah, and hopefully I can put this back together and then possibly utilize it to help younger men and women, adoptees, who are about to run the gauntlet without much direction, um, with the ignorance surrounding adoption and the traumas that are attached to it. Um, because ultimately, I think you should be able to walk down to any doctor, any hospital, any counselor or therapist or school counselor and simply say, you know what, I'm struggling with my adoption. And at that point, any of those people should say, okay, you're here, let's start the process. And it should be well known that they're going to come and they're going to have struggles. But it's too big of a scam going for them to come out and let anyone say that there's anything wrong with adoption. And that was part of the discussion today as well, that how bad is adoption? And if my videos disappear one day, well, then that should tell you, right? And even as it stands now, I sometimes wonder if I'm one of those people that gets their videos tossed to the back of the line, because it's not. Um, I'm not supporting the system. The system wants adoption. It likes adoption, but not for the reasons you have been sold. So anyways, sorry, I ran a bit long there, but I wanted you folks to please do understand that, yes, I get frustrated, and yes, I try to explain the situations and my frustrations and my anger, and there is anger. There is anger at the system and how it keeps going like this. But ultimately, I'm in a bit of a pit, but I'm crawling out of it, and I see that as long as I can continue to work on my path, that things hopefully will get better, and the system won't entirely bury me. So, um, again, I love hearing from you guys. I love your comments. Sorry if I miss anybody. I've been having trouble with my Google Chrome on my laptop, which causes me some issues in getting to my Facebook and to my Messenger and things. So if I'm missing you or if I've missed a message from you, put it in my comments on the videos. I almost always get those. And feel free to email me at citizenbrianjames@gmail.com. And you can also like, share, subscribe. And hopefully over time and over, maybe the next couple years, um, maybe we can really do something for adoptees, and maybe we can really get the word out there so that we don't have to struggle and we don't have to be so burdened with other people's inability to be honest. Thanks. Have a great night.